Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into a bit of a mystery.
Oh,
It's one that's puzzled historians and scientists for decades, actually. Why didn't Nazi Germany develop the atomic bomb?
during World War II?
Yeah, during World War II.
Wow.
It's a question that, looms large, especially when you consider their scientific prowess and all that, or all the high stakes of the war.
Yeah.
And you brought some excerpts today from Heisenberg's War, The Secret History by Thomas Powers,
Yes.
which seems like an incredible resource for really unpacking this.
It is.
So are you ready to kind of explore the historical context?
I am.
Analyze some of these key events and personalities, maybe?
Sure.
And try to answer this question. Why didn't the Nazis win the atomic race?
Let's get into it.
Okay, so to understand what happened, or really what didn't happen,
Right.
in Germany, we need to rewind a bit
Okay.
and look at the pre-war scientific landscape.
Okay.
We often hear about the rise of, Nazi ideology,
Right.
but German science was flourishing at the time.
Yeah. Especially physics, wasn't it?
It was. You had figures like Max Planck,
Oh, wow.
a Nobel laureate,
Wow.
a giant in the field.
Yeah.
He was a strong advocate for academic freedom and,
Really?
and even tried to shield Jewish scientists
From the anti-Semitism?
from the increasing anti-Semitism that was taking root.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there was this other movement emerging
At the same time.
at the same time.
Good to physics, right.
That's right.
I'm curious, having read these sources, what was its appeal?
Right.
It seems like a nationalistic, anti-Semitic attempt to control science.
Sure.
Did it hold any actual scientific weight?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the appeal really lies in understanding its core tenets.
Okay.
Deutsche Physik wasn't just about rejecting Einstein's theories because he was Jewish.
Okay.
It was wrapped up in this idea of German versus Jewish science.
Interesting.
Proponents claim that German science was intuitive, practical, focused on experimental observation,
Okay.
while Jewish science, as they called it? Oh, wow.
It was too theoretical and abstract.
Interesting.
This narrative, however flawed,
Yeah.
resonated with the Nazi regime's ideology
Right.
and their desire to control every aspect of German society,
Including science.
including science. Yeah.
It's a stark reminder of how ideology can twist even something as seemingly objective as science.
It is.
And this movement ultimately had a chilling effect on the entire scientific community, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jewish scientists were expelled from universities,
Oh, wow.
their work dismissed.
Yeah.
A climate of fear and suspicion took hold.
Yeah.
This is where the story of Werner Heisenberg,
Okay.
a central figure in our deep dive, becomes really interesting.
Okay.
He was a Nobel Prize winner himself, but even he wasn't immune to the attacks of Deutsche Physik.
Reading about the Heisenberg affair in these sources, it's incredible to see how someone awarded such a prestigious scientific honor could be targeted simply because of his association with what they deemed Jewish science. It really underscores the power and danger of this movement.
It really does, and it puts Heisenberg's situation in a whole new light.
Okay.
Powers details how he was publicly attacked,
Yeah.
even labeled a white Jew in an SS newspaper.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine the pressure he must have felt?
It's terrifying.
Knowing his work, his reputation, his very life could be in jeopardy.
You mentioned that he eventually wrote to Himmler to defend himself.
Yes, he did.
How did that unfold?
Well, it's fascinating because it wasn't just a plea for his career.
Okay.
Heisenberg argued that his work was essential for Germany's scientific progress
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately its war effort.
Wow.
But what's even more intriguing
Yeah.
is that it was actually a social connection between their mothers that helped facilitate Himmler's intervention.
Really?
Powers really highlights how personal relationships and social dynamics played a role even in this high-stakes world of science and politics.
It seems like such a strange footnote in history, but it really underscores that these scientists weren't operating in a vacuum.
Yeah.
They were navigating a complex web of political pressures, personal connections,
Right.
all while trying to conduct groundbreaking research.
Precisely. And this politically charged environment would have a significant impact on the direction of German research going forward, especially as the world entered a new era with the discovery of nuclear fission.
That's right. In 1938, the discovery of nuclear fission basically fired the starting pistol in a global race to harness this power.
Yeah.
What stands out to you about the immediate reactions to this discovery?
Well, it's important to remember that this discovery wasn't just about energy.
Right.
It was about weapons.
Of course.
And I think what's really striking is the level of anxiety among Allied scientists,
Mm.
especially those who had fled Nazi persecution.
Yeah.
They knew the potential implications of this discovery
Right.
and were terrified of a German bomb.
It's like something out of a spy thriller.
Yeah.
A race against time with incredibly high stakes. And it was this fear that ultimately led to the Einstein-Szilard letter to President Roosevelt, right?
Yes.
What's interesting to me about this letter is that it wasn't just about warning of a potential German bomb.
Right.
It was about urging the U.S. to invest in its own research, wasn't it?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The letter played a pivotal role in paving the way for the Manhattan Project,
Right.
the massive American effort to develop the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the British were already working on their own program,
Okay.
the Two-Barrel Project.
So you have this global race for the bomb underway,
Yeah.
fueled by anxieties, a sense of urgency,
Ar-
and a whole lot of secrecy.
A lot of secrecy.
So while all this is happening,
Yeah.
what's going on in Germany?
Well,
Was there a similar concerted effort to develop an atomic bomb?
the German effort wasn't as straightforward as the Allied programs.
Okay.
Powers introduces us to the Ehrenverein,
Okay.
this informal group of German scientists working on nuclear research during the war.
Come on, Mariah. The Uranium Club.
Right.
It sounds almost casual for something with such potentially world-altering consequences.
It does, yeah.
What surprised you the most about the Ehrenverein while going through the source material?
What surprised me the most, and I think this might surprise you too,
Okay.
is how decentralized and often chaotic it was.
Really?
You had competing research groups,
Mm-hmm.
agendas, and priorities.
Okay.
It wasn't this centralized, well-funded machine like the Manhattan Project.
Wow.
The Ehrenverein was hampered by bureaucracy, resource shortages,
Mm.
and frankly, a lack of clear direction.
So it wasn't exactly a well-oiled machine?
No, not at all.
And what about leadership?
Well,
Was there a clear figurehead? Someone like Oppenheimer in the U.S.?
Heisenberg's role is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
He gradually became more prominent within the Ehrenverein,
Okay.
but he was never formally the director.
So even the leadership of the German effort was somewhat ambiguous. It makes you wonder if that lack of clear direction and focus ultimately contributed to their inability to develop the bomb.
It's definitely a factor to consider.
Yeah.
And it's made even more intriguing by the fact that there were conflicting views within the Ehrenverein about the feasibility and even the desirability
Oh, wow.
of pursuing a bomb.
That's right.
You had figures like Fritz Hautermann's
Okay.
arguing for a more aggressive approach.
So he believed a bomb was achievable and could be decisive in the war, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
What do you think, based on your understanding of Hautermann's, drove his perspective?
Hautermann's is such a fascinating, tragic figure.
Yeah.
He was incredibly brilliant,
Mm-hmm.
but also somewhat volatile.
Interesting.
Remember, he was part Jewish,
Right.
and despite his initial ability to stay in Germany,
Yeah.
he was eventually arrested by the Soviets while working in Kharkov.
Oh, wow.
After years of imprisonment, he was handed back to the Gestapo in 1940. I think his experiences, his understanding of the brutality of both the Soviet and Nazi regimes,
Yeah.
likely fueled his belief that a bomb was necessary to end the war quickly.
It's a reminder of the personal stories and motivations woven into the larger tapestry of wartime science.
Yeah, it is.
So you've got these competing views within the Ehrenverein,
Yes.
a lack of centralized leadership,
Right.
and a less than efficient system in place.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if those internal dynamics played just as much of a role as any external factors in shaping the outcome of the German nuclear program.
Absolutely. This internal friction becomes even more intriguing when we consider Heisenberg's controversial visit to Niels Bohr in Copenhagen in 1941.
That's right. This meeting is one of the most debated events in this whole story.
It is.
It's shrouded in mystery and conflicting interpretations.
For sure.
Before we dive into that, I'm curious, having read these sources yourself,
Yeah.
what's your personal take on this? What do you think was going through Heisenberg's mind when he made that risky trip to Copenhagen?
That's a great question, and one that historians have grappled with for decades.
Yeah,
I think you have to consider the complex relationship between Heisenberg and Bohr.
right.
Heisenberg had studied under Bohr, considered him a friend and mentor.
Okay.
So on one hand, perhaps he was genuinely seeking guidance, a sounding board, for his moral dilemmas about developing a devastating weapon.
Yeah.
On the other hand, and this is what makes it so fascinating,
Okay.
maybe he had ulterior motives.
Interesting.
Was he trying to gauge the progress of Allied research?
Okay.
Was he subtly trying to discourage Bohr from pursuing a bomb?
It's like a historical puzzle,
It is.
with each piece offering a tantalizing glimpse into Heisenberg's motivations,
Right.
but never revealing the complete picture.
Yeah.
And Bohr's reaction only adds to the mystery, doesn't it?
It does.
He was furious afterwards, refusing to ever really clarify what was discussed.
Yes.
It makes you wonder if he felt betrayed by Heisenberg or perhaps shocked by what he revealed.
Exactly. And to make things even more complicated, Heisenberg later claimed he wanted to discuss the moral implications of the bomb,
Oh, wow.
and maybe even reach some kind of understanding with Bohr, who was a staunch opponent of such weapons.
Okay.
But some historians argue Heisenberg might have been trying to assess the Allied progress or even subtly discourage Bohr from developing a bomb.
It's like a hall of mirrors,
It is.
with each reflection offering a different interpretation of Heisenberg's intentions.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most significant takeaway from this meeting, regardless of Heisenberg's true motives?
I think the most significant takeaway is that this meeting
Okay.
and the subsequent ambiguity surrounding it
Yeah.
had a profound impact on both men
Mm-hmm.
and on the trajectory of the atomic race.
Okay.
It also marked a turning point in the Allied perception of the German threat,
Right.
leading to an escalation in their efforts to sabotage and spy on the German program.
That's right. The Allies, already concerned about potential German bomb, really ramped up their efforts to disrupt their research.
Yeah. One of the most well-known examples is the British commando raids on the Norsk Hydro heavy water plant in Norway, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. These raids were incredibly daring,
Okay.
carried out in harsh winter conditions.
Wow.
They targeted the Nordic hydro plant because heavy water was crucial for the type of reactor Heisenberg was pursuing.
Okay.
It acts as a moderator, slowing down neutrons and increasing the likelihood of a chain reaction.
Wow.
And this plant was the world's leading producer of heavy water at the time.
So controlling this plant was essential for both sides.
Yes.
What strikes me is that these weren't just surgical strikes.
No.
These raids were part of a larger campaign to disrupt and delay the German program. They were putting a lot of resources and manpower into stopping the Germans, which speaks volumes about how seriously they were taking the threat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were successful in disrupting production multiple times only fueled German anxieties about their own progress.
Wow.
It's a testament to how determined the Allies were to thwart the German program,
Right.
whatever its true aims might have been.
And it wasn't just the British. The U.S., under General Leslie Groves, also intensified their intelligence efforts, right?
Right. As the U.S. ramped up the Manhattan Project,
Yeah.
Groves, who was not a man known for subtlety,
Okay.
took a keen interest in the German program.
Okay.
He launched the ALSOS mission,
Okay.
a top-secret operation tasked with identifying, locating, and securing German scientists and their research.
So the hunt for Heisenberg was on.
It was.
They weren't just trying to stop the German program. They were actively trying to find and either neutralize or potentially recruit these scientists.
Exactly.
This brings us to a really interesting point in the story, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. This cat-and-mouse game, playing out across war-torn Europe,
Yeah.
adds another layer of tension to this already complex narrative.
Yeah.
And it sets the stage for a dramatic finale as the Allies close in on Germany,
Right.
determined to uncover the truth about their nuclear program and secure its key players.
We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
From the pre-war climate of fear in German science
Right.
to the race for the bomb ignited by the discovery of fission,
Uh-huh.
the Uranverein's ambiguous leadership and internal debates,
Yes.
Heisenberg's mysterious meeting with Bohr,
Yeah.
and the escalating Allied efforts to disrupt the German program?
It's quite a story.
Where do we go from here?
Well, next we'll delve into the closing months of the war as the Allies finally catch up with Heisenberg and uncover the true state of the German program,
Okay,
which I think will be quite revealing given what you've read of the source material.
let's do it. We left off with the Allies closing in on Germany,
Yes.
determined to find out the truth about their nuclear program. The hunt for Heisenberg intensifies here, right?
It does.
There was even a plan to kidnap him from Switzerland.
That's right. The OSS,
Oh, wow.
the precursor to the CIA,
Okay.
was tasked with this audacious mission.
Wow.
They were considering sending Moberg,
Okay.
a former baseball player turned spy,
A baseball player turned spy. Wow.
to make contact with Heisenberg in Switzerland.
It sounds like the plot of a spy movie.
It does.
A baseball player turned spy,
Yeah.
tasked with potentially kidnapping a Nobel Prize-winning physicist.
I know, right?
I'm assuming you found this part of the story particularly interesting.
Absolutely. It's incredible how these different worlds collide during wartime.
Yeah.
Berg actually went to Zurich
Okay.
and attended a lecture given by Heisenberg.
Wow.
But instead of kidnapping him,
Okay.
he was supposed to assess Heisenberg's knowledge of the bomb
Okay.
and potentially eliminate him if he seemed too close to success.
Oh my gosh.
Talk about pressure.
I can only imagine what must have been going through Berg's mind to have that kind of responsibility,
Right.
to make a decision that could potentially alter the course of history.
It's incredible.
It really highlights the weight of these individual choices, doesn't it?
It does. And thankfully, Berg didn't have to make that ultimate decision.
Okay.
Based on the lecture and his conversations with Heisenberg,
Mm-hmm.
Berg concluded that the German program wasn't a significant threat.
Okay.
He even reported back that Heisenberg seemed more interested in reactor research
Yeah, really.
than building a bomb.
So the baseball spy spared the physicist's life.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think how one person's assessment could have such a profound impact.
Really is.
But even with Berg's report,
Yeah.
the Allies weren't taking any chances, were they?
Not really, no.
They still wanted definitive proof of what the Germans were up to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Alsos mission,
Okay.
led by Samuel Goudsmit,
Okay.
was still actively pursuing German scientists and research materials.
Okay.
They were following closely behind the advancing Allied armies,
Wow.
often arriving in towns just hours after they had been liberated.
Reading about Goudsmit's personal story in the source material is quite moving.
Yes.
His parents were tragically killed in Auschwitz,
Right.
adding another layer of complexity to this mission for him. Did Powers go into detail about how Goudsmit approached this mission, given his personal connection to the horrors inflicted by the Nazi regime?
He did.
Okay.
You can sense this urgency in Powers' account of the Alsos mission,
Okay.
a drive to understand the German effort,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps to make sense of the atrocities committed.
Right.
It's a potent reminder that this wasn't just an abstract scientific pursuit.
Right.
It was deeply intertwined with the human cost of the war.
So the Alsos mission continued its pursuit,
It did.
and in April 1945,
Yeah.
they achieved a significant breakthrough.
They did.
They captured a group of leading German scientists,
Yes.
including Heisenberg.
Yes. Heisenberg and other prominent physicists, including Otto Hahn,
Okay.
were found in a small town called Hechingen in southern Germany.
Not exactly the high-tech, top-secret facility you might imagine.
Not at all.
It's almost anticlimactic, isn't it?
It is.
You'd expect this frantic race to build a superweapon
Right.
to culminate in some hidden bunker, not a small town.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
And their capture in such an unremarkable location further confirmed the growing suspicion that the German program was far less advanced than initially feared.
You've got to wonder what Heisenberg's reaction was when the Alsos team showed up.
I know, right?
Was he relieved?
Yeah.
Defiant?
Mm-hmm.
Did he know this was coming?
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
Powers describes him as being initially cautious,
Okay.
which makes sense.
Yeah.
He had been operating under a veil of secrecy for years,
Right.
unsure of what the Allies knew.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that he wasn't exactly forthcoming either.
Oh, really?
Perhaps he was still trying to protect his work, his legacy.
Or maybe he was simply trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened.
Maybe.
The war was ending, his world was changing, and he was now a prisoner of the very forces he had been racing against.
Yeah.
It must have been a surreal experience for him
Absolutely.
and for the Alsos team.
Yeah.
It was the culmination of years of speculation and fear. They finally had access to the German research.
Right.
The opportunity to see firsthand how far they had progressed.
That's right.
And what did they find?
Well,
Did the German research live up to the fears that had driven the Allied efforts for so long?
what they found was surprising, to say the least. The German program was far less advanced than they had imagined.
Really?
Their research notes, experimental setups,
Mm.
everything pointed to limited progress,
Wow.
especially compared to the Manhattan Project.
So the mystery deepened.
It did.
If they weren't as far along as the Allies feared, why?
Right.
Was it simply incompetence?
Well,
Lack of resources?
yeah.
Or was there something else at play?
This is where the post-war debate about Heisenberg's role really takes center stage. Was he intentionally misleading the Nazi leadership?
Okay.
Did he make critical errors that set the program back?
Yeah.
Or was it a combination of factors?
Well, what are your thoughts, having read the source material?
Well, it's hard to say definitively. Powers does a good job of presenting the different interpretations.
Right.
But there's no smoking gun.
Okay.
Heisenberg himself claimed after the war that German scientists had deliberately downplayed the feasibility of the bomb,
Really?
trying to sabotage the program from within.
Wow.
He painted himself as a reluctant participant,
Okay.
morally opposed to creating such a weapon.
It's a compelling narrative, isn't it?
It is.
The Nobel laureate standing up to a brutal regime,
Yeah.
risking his life to prevent a catastrophe.
Yeah.
But is it the whole truth?
Many historians are skeptical.
Okay.
They argue that Heisenberg might have simply miscalculated the amount of uranium needed for a bomb,
Okay.
a crucial error that could have significantly hindered their progress.
So that's one of the key points of contention.
It is.
Deliberate deception or a genuine scientific miscalculation.
Right.
What makes this so difficult to unravel is that you have to consider the context.
Exactly.
These scientists were operating under immense pressure. With limited resources and constant scrutiny,
Right.
it's possible that a combination of factors contributed to their lack of progress.
It's very possible.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yes.
You can see the outlines of the image, but the full picture remains elusive.
Exactly.
And it's important to remember that it wasn't just Heisenberg involved.
Right.
Other scientists like Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker,
Yes.
a brilliant theorist and close confidant of Heisenberg,
Yes, he was.
also played a role in the program.
He did.
Weizsäcker's an interesting figure.
Yeah.
He later became a prominent voice in the peace movement,
Right.
advocating for nuclear disarmament.
Yeah, his transformation highlights the complex legacies of these scientists.
Yeah.
Their wartime experiences shaped their views and actions in profound ways.
Right.
And each of their stories adds another layer to our understanding of the German nuclear program and its ultimate failure.
It's a reminder that history is rarely black and white.
It's not.
It's full of nuances, contradiction.
And individual choices that shape the course of events.
And in this case, it leaves us with a question that goes beyond the specifics of the German program.
Okay.
What are the responsibilities of scientists, especially in times of war?
That's a big question.
It is.
Do they have an obligation to pursue knowledge, even if it could lead to devastating consequences?
Right.
Or do they have a higher moral duty to prevent such outcomes, even if it means defying their government or compromising their research?
It's a tough one.
It's a question that resonates even today, isn't it?
It does.
We're still grappling with the ethical implications of scientific advancements,
Yeah,
especially those with the potential for mass destruction.
absolutely.
This deep dive into the German nuclear program forces us to confront those uncomfortable questions,
It does.
to consider the choices individuals make when faced with extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
We've explored the hunt for Heisenberg,
Yes.
the capture of the German scientists,
Right.
their surprising lack of progress.
And the ongoing debate about Heisenberg's motivations.
Yeah.
What are the key takeaways here, would you say?
Well, the most obvious takeaway is that the German bomb program was far less advanced than initially feared.
Right.
But beyond that,
Yeah.
I think the real value of this deep dive is that it highlights the complexity of wartime science.
Okay.
It's not just about technical challenges.
Right.
It's about individual choices,
Mm-hmm.
moral dilemmas,
Yeah.
and the interplay of science and politics.
And it's about the enduring legacy of those choices.
It is.
The German program may have failed,
Yeah.
but the questions it raises about the responsibility of scientists in a world with such destructive power are still relevant today.
Absolutely.
We've been unpacking this mystery of why Germany didn't develop the atomic bomb, and it's clear it's about so much more than just the science. As we move into the post-war period, the narrative takes some interesting turns. It becomes about how history is remembered, and maybe even rewritten. What stands out to you about this post-war period, especially in light of the source material you've provided?
What's fascinating is how Heisenberg and other German scientists tried to shape the narrative of their wartime work. They wanted to control how they were perceived, both by their peers and by the public. It's almost as if they were trying to create their own version of events, a version that presented them in a more favorable light.
So it wasn't just about scientific progress or technical challenges during the war. It became about legacy, about reputation. What were some of the key strategies they used to control the narrative?
One of the most common tactics was to emphasize their moral opposition to the bomb.
Okay.
They claimed that they deliberately downplayed the feasibility of the project, even sabotaged it from within because they didn't want to unleash such a devastating weapon.
It's a compelling argument, isn't it?
It is.
The idea that these scientists, working under a brutal regime, were secretly trying to protect the world from a Nazi bomb. But was it true?
That's the million-dollar question. Powers explores these claims in detail, presenting evidence that both supports and challenges their version of events. What's fascinating is that Heisenberg himself was very active in promoting this narrative.
Really?
Yeah, he gave interviews, wrote articles, and even published a book where he presented himself as a reluctant participant in the program, a scientist who used his knowledge to prevent a catastrophe.
It's interesting that you bring up the book. Did Powers go into detail about it?
It did. It's called Physics and Beyond. And it's actually where the idea of Heisenberg's deliberate miscalculation of the critical mass was first introduced. This claim has been the subject of much debate among historians, with some arguing that it was a deliberate act of deception, while others believe it was a genuine scientific error.
It's almost impossible to separate fact from fiction at this point. You have these scientists trying to control their own narrative, and then you have historians trying to piece together the truth from a fragmented and often contradictory historical record.
Exactly. And it highlights the challenges of interpreting history, especially when it involves events that were shrouded in secrecy and fueled by political agendas. It becomes a puzzle, a search for truth within a web of competing narratives.
So what's the takeaway here? How do we, as readers and as individuals interested in understanding the past, navigate these competing versions of events?
I think the key is to be critical, to examine the evidence carefully, and to consider the motivations of those who are shaping the narrative. It's important to remember that history is never objective. It's always filtered through the perspectives of those who lived it and those who write about it.
So it's not just about finding the right answer. It's about understanding the complexities, the nuances, and the different ways in which the past can be interpreted.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most valuable insights that Powers offers. He doesn't present a definitive answer to the question of why Germany didn't build the bomb. Instead, he provides a framework for thinking about it, a way to approach the historical record with a critical eye and an open mind.
He challenges us to think for ourselves, to weigh the evidence, and to draw our own conclusions. And I think that's what makes this deep dive so engaging. It's not just about learning facts. It's about engaging in a process of inquiry, of questioning, and of interpretation.
You've hit the nail on the head. This deep dive has taken us beyond the simple question of why Germany didn't build the bomb. It's forced us to confront the complexities of wartime science, the moral dilemmas faced by individuals in extraordinary circumstances, and the enduring legacy of the atomic age.
And it's reminded us that history is not just something that happened in the past. It's a living, breathing entity that continues to shape our present and our future.
We started this deep dive by exploring the reasons why Germany didn't develop the atomic bomb. But we've ended up grappling with questions that go far beyond the specifics of this one historical event.
We've delved into the nature of scientific ambition, the ethical responsibilities of researchers, and the challenges of understanding the past. And I think those are questions that are more relevant today than ever before.
You're absolutely right. As we face new scientific advancements, new technological challenges, and the ever-present threat of nuclear proliferation, the lessons we can learn from this deep dive into the German nuclear program are incredibly valuable.
It's a reminder that history is not just a collection of dates and events. It's a source of wisdom, a guide for navigating the complexities of the present, and a call to action for creating a better future.
And it's a story that, even with all the information we've covered, still has so many unanswered questions. What do you think, having gone through this deep dive, is the biggest question that remains for you?
That's a great question. For me, it's the question of individual responsibility. Heisenberg and the other German scientists make choices, sometimes difficult choices, within a system that was shaped by ideology and fear. How do we as individuals navigate those complex situations? How do we balance our personal ambitions with our ethical responsibilities? These are questions that I'll continue to think about long after this deep dive.
Those are certainly questions worth pondering. And perhaps that's the most valuable takeaway from this deep dive. It's not about finding definitive answers, but about asking the right questions. The questions that challenge us to think critically about the past, the present, and the future.
This has been a truly fascinating exploration of history, science, and the human condition. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another intriguing topic. Until then, keep asking questions, keep seeking knowledge, and keep exploring the world around you.